Process is I said, look, guys, if you hire me for this, I'm going to be a change agent. I'm not going to sit around on my hands. There's all kinds of stuff that can be done here. So I got the job, started here in September of 1998, and the first thing I started doing was doing research on establishing a major native plant collection to balance the program, to have a beautiful ornamental garden, but to also have a significant, meaningful, well-designed native plant collection. So started doing that, and then what happened is that sort of grew into a life of its own. All of a sudden, we started getting these gifts all about conservation. I went to speak at several international meetings in the space of 3 years, making presentations in Spain and the UK and China. And we suddenly became really well known for the native plant collection, even though it was relatively new. Now it's really well established. And then that trend of change just continued to grow. I think the fact is that I found sort of a blank slate when I got here. There just wasn't a lot of programmatic maturity. There weren't a lot of ideas flowing. There were some beautiful gardens, some hardworking horticulturists, some incredible ornamental collections, the hostas, the daylilies, but there wasn't a programmatic sense of direction, of mission. So I wrote a mission statement. The agency didn't have a mission statement at the time. We got an email and a website. The agency didn't have email or a website at the time.
And this is by the year 2000, or?
This is by the year 2000.
Okay.
And so we were just making these dramatic strides while the agency was just sort of moseying along. They were very supportive of what we were doing, but we were clearly outpacing them from a programmatic standpoint. But that changed when the agency got a new executive director in 2008 or 9, I believe.
And you're talking about the Regional Park Authority.
The Regional Park Authority, yeah. And then the agency really just, metamorphosed and became a much more dynamic operation, and continues to do so. And essentially sort of caught up with us programmatically, and that was a wonderful thing. And then we began to work on the Korean Bell Garden as part of all of that. And again, the Korean Bell Garden really required some programmatic building and significance. It isn't just enough to build this beautiful pavilion and go, wow, we have this beautiful pavilion. It had to have a horticultural component. So I immediately said, if we're going to build this, the only way it's appropriate to have it here is to create a collection of Northeast Asian plants. Well, that's what we're doing. So we've brought together a cultural and horticultural icon. We talk about this in an article in the Public Garden magazine. And the peonies in full bloom, which is wonderful.
Gorgeous.
We do a lot in that sense. In the time I've been here, we've published around 20 or 25 articles, normally 1 or 2 a year, about the garden, about conservation, about education, in both American and European journals. And then I was the garden writer for the Virginia Sportsman magazine for 10 years, and published, about 40 articles for them on botanical gardens around the world. And that involved, travel to North Africa, to the Middle East, to Australia, South America, the United States, Asia, so, lots of...
And what would you share when you were on these trips in terms of your message about what you do here in Northern Virginia?
So, a big part of the message I was relaying is you can take a purely ornamental garden and build a conservation program into it. And this is a message to go out to all these gardens in the world that are purely ornamental, gorgeous, nice places to pleasure gardens, wonderful places to visit. But in this day and age, I really, really feel like every garden in the world, every garden in the world should have some notion of conservation in their message, if not in their plant collection. So that's really what I was sort of preaching, and it's a message that went over very well in pretty much every audience. In 2004 at a meeting in Barcelona, I met a very interesting guy named Mizahat, and he was a Turkish shipping tycoon. Hello. And he built a most extraordinary botanical garden in Istanbul, where I went to visit him in 2012. And I talked to him about how important it was for that garden to be more than a pretty place, to have a conservation message. And he really, really picked up on that. And when I visited the garden, it was absolutely amazing what they had done to have a strong, stout conservation message in their mission. So, that was a big part of it. And then, a lot of other things, a lot of other, adjunct things happened. We began the Art and Place program, or the Art Naturally program. We have almost 20 sculptures all over the property from artists around the country. Over half of those have been donated to the garden at a collective value of over $150,000 in artwork. Hi guys, how are you? So we've made all these strides as a cultural institution, even though we're part of a public park system. Good morning, friends. It's just been such a privilege. And I will just tell you, Cherie, that the greatest privilege for me working here is to have been able to interact with the public. I mean, I know so many people that were invested in this garden when I started working here that aren't even with us anymore. They were elderly people when I met them 21 years ago, and many of them are gone, and many of them made gifts and remarkable contributions. When we published the Potomac Valley classroom map, I had two of the country's most senior geologists, retired from the USGS in Reston, assist in the publication of that. These guys were absolutely monuments in their field, and they were happy to help us do what we were doing. We're going by the Bluebird houses. That's been here for 18 years now, the Bluebird Trail. We manage the whole property for bird diversity, and it is pretty diverse. So all of these things sort of collectively continue to sort of roll forward. And then this is the base of the Potomac Valley Collection, which is our conservation flagship. And it runs all the way up through these woods. So we recently had this collection verified by the herbarium at George Mason University. It's a very, very important scientific step for us, a collections management step, that we verified all the plants we've planted in there over 20 years. And that really is, today, I would argue, one of the most significant native plant collections in the Washington area, certainly, and in the Middle East, in the Middle Atlantic. You can go down to Lewis Ginter in Richmond, which is an incredible garden. It's unbelievable what those guys have accomplished in the space of 30 years. Just stunning. But they don't have a really focused native plant collection that's routinely interpreted for education purposes. The Potomac Valley Collection has pretty much become our principal classroom for the thousands of school kids that come through here every year. So they're learning about native plants, they're learning about watersheds, they're learning about the connection of healthy forest and water quality. That was one of the principal goals of establishing that collection years ago. The collection was featured in the New York Times Science section in 2005, and it also received the Biology Fellowship Award in 2003 from the Washington Academy of Science. So it's a pretty significant thing that we've been able to build over the years. And yet when we've built that, we've never lost sight of the fact that this is just an extraordinary sanctuary and aesthetic place for people. So we really